welcome to our walk. The walk from story to story with Franz Kafka. It won't be easy for us because we have to transfer ourselves in time more than 100 years back.
Vy vypadáte jako Indián. Jsem si myslela, že jste Indián.
Možná, že jsem Indián. Ale jsem také Němec, Čech a Žid. Ale možná máte pravdu, jsem Indián. Možná.
A nebo ne?
You, of course, find Kafka's head or figure on the cups and on the t-shirts, and so probably he became the face of Prague, even if more interesting is what he writes.
The relationship between Kafka and Prague is very complex. The family was moving way too quickly around the town. He was moving, so that's why so many places are connected in one way or another. Nowadays, it's a buzzword, it's a brand. Quite a few tourists visiting Prague just because it is Kafka's home city, which is quite unimaginable for the locals that are in some cases completely unaware of him.
It's not the memorial of Kafka. I really use him as irony, a pop star of the city. It is also staying behind the city hall. So when you walk out from the city hall, you actually hit the Kafka, sort of laughing at you. I think it's also about the humor because Kafka is always considered to be a deep and terrible, absurd, depressive, which is not a total truth. It's in a way he's very funny.
Nechtěl jsem dělat tradiční pomník, že na nějakém podstavci stojí zkrátka postava, ale chtěl jsem, aby ten pomník zároveň měl v sobě ducha té tvorby France Kafky. Jednou v noci v kavárně četl jeho novelu, ranou novelu, která je ještě velice surrealistická a jmenuje se Popis jednoho zápasu. A tam dva přátelé se toulají noční Prahou, jdou z večírku. V bizarní situaci se jeden z nich, což je Kafkovo alter ego, vyhoupne na ramena druhého a jede na jeho ramenou do krajiny, kterou on sám se vymýšlí. To znamená, on z reálné Prahy na někom na ramenou svého přítele projede do krajiny, která je zkrátka snová a v ní se odvíjí dál příběh novely Popis jednoho zápasu. Vyndal jsem tu postavu z obleku, aby si každý jako návštěvník nebo každý, kdo tu sochu vidí, mohl sám vyložit, co za sílu ho nese. Protože jsem chtěl, aby ten pomník měl řadu výkladů. Jo? To znamená, on může tu postavu ovládat, zároveň může být i jí unášený.
The two totalitarian regimes that ruled this country since World War II until 1990, first the Nazis and the communists, in a sense, banned Kafka. Obviously, the Germans were purging not just international but German authors as well from printing houses and libraries. And then, under the communist regime, Kafka maybe was not officially banned, but he was not published, and that was enough.
He was born here in 1883 as the first son of Hermann Kafka and Julia Löwy. After him, two boys came who died as babies, but afterwards, three sisters came, and the youngest one, Otla, was his great friend. You see, certainly that's what I see. Here she is sitting in white skirts and begging, a beggar woman with whom Kafka had an adventure. Once, as a very small boy, I was given a zexel and felt a great urge to hand it to an old beggar woman who sat between the big and the small market. But the sum seemed to me enormous, a sum which probably never before had been given to a beggar. So I was ashamed in front of the beggar woman to do something so unheard of. But give it to her, I felt I must. I therefore changed the zexel into 10 kreuzers, gave one to the beggar woman, ran round the whole block of the town hall and the arcade near the small market, arrived from the left as a completely new benefactor, gave the beggar woman another kreuzer, started to run again, and actually made this round 10 times. In any case, toward the end, I was so exhausted, morally as well, that I ran straight home and cried until my mother replaced the zexel. And he didn't have to run far away because the family lived there.
Kafka's texts are absurd to a point, but they are actually quite visionary because he was somehow able to uncover the modern totalitarianism actually before it was put into practice. Because that's why both Nazis and communists hated his work, because he was quite prophetic how such a regime can look like, and obviously even Kafka was not able to see the worst excesses of those regimes.
We know him more from the so-called Kafkaesque side, that absurd side, strange and weird things, because we don't know him. He distorts the thing to show them. That's also why he so often uses animals as main characters. People can see themselves in the animals better than if they look at each other.
Já píšu.
Vy jste spisovatel.
Zkouším to.
Každou noc.
Každou beru to naprosto vážně.
A o čem píšete?
O zvířatech.
O zvířatech?
Ne. O sobě.
Tak o zvířatech anebo o sobě?
Ano. To vyjde na stejno.
And it's true that many of his personal writings has the same literary quality of his official published literary works. And maybe the letter to his father is the best example, the best known letter maybe in the history of mankind that was never sent.
He had a story with his father, probably in this house. It isn't sure if it was here. And there can happen things as he describes them to his father in his never-ending letter. You may remember it too. Once in the night, I kept on whimpering for water, not, I'm certain, because I was thirsty, but probably partly to be annoying, partly to amuse myself. After several vigorous threats had failed to have any effect, you took me out of bed, carried me out on to the pavlach, and led me there alone for a while in my nightshirt. Even years afterwards, I suffered from the tormenting fancy that the huge man, my father, the ultimate authority, would come almost for no reason at all and take me out of bed in the night and carry me out on to the pavlach. And that therefore I was such a mere nothing to him.
The letter became a symbol of several generations and of the modern post-family world.
Of course, it is a very personal letter, isn't it? And Kafka speaks there about very intimate things which happened in his childhood and in his youth. And of course, they influenced him. Every writer writes about his own experiences. So did Kafka. But maybe in Kafka's life, these things were even more important, as he was writer from his childhood on. And he gathered those adventures, those happenings like this on the pavlach. He even managed something which I don't think other writers do. He manipulated his life in expectance to be able to write about it.
tom řešení té sochy hraje velikou roli úloha nebo řekněme postava jeho otce, který byl velmi dominantní figura. On se k němu vztahoval vlastně pořád, většinou s ním vlastně bojoval, jo. A furt se mu snažil dokázat, že on sám vlastně taky přináší nějakou kvalitu, ten jeho otec to jeho psaní pořádně neakceptoval a Kafka byl velice éterická postava, prostě literát, složitý člověk, byl po svý matce, byl to zkrátka rozený umělec, i když pracoval jako úředník v pojišťovně. On se pořád snažil tomu otci dokázat, že zkrátka taky za něco stojí. Jo. A samozřejmě, že ta postava spodní je z části i ten otec.
Ani nevím, jestli si dostal můj dopis. Nikdy ses o něm nezmínil ani slovem. Dopadlo to, jak si předpokládal. Nic pořádného jsem nenapsal. To málo, co po mně zbyde, doraz spálí. Nechceš se napít? Vidíš, ani nevím, jestli máš rád tokajské. Máš rád tokajské? Promiň, ano. Máš pravdu, ty jsi pil vždycky pivo. Švechadský ležák. Strašně rád bych se s tebou opil, otče. Počkej, naleju ti. Na zdraví. Na ex. Ještě jednu. Do dna.
His father was a successful man. He kept 4 shops, one after the other, and here that was the top of the career. What he sold were fancy goods, threads and buttons and lace and even hats and sticks. In his letter to his father, he writes, however, the business in itself, particularly in my childhood, so long as it was a shop, I ought to have liked it very much. It was so animated, the lights lit at evening, so much to see and hear. But you, I heard and saw shouting, cursing, and raging in the shop in a way that, in my opinion, at that time, had not its equal anywhere in the world. You called the employees paid enemies, and that was what they were too. But even before they became such, you seemed to me to be their paying enemy. You know, there is another letter to the father and the mother, which was the very last letter he wrote already on his deathbed. And that is a beautiful letter in which he remembers how his father and him went to the swimming school and swam together and drank beer together. So you never shall believe him. You never shall believe what he writes. You have to go between the lines to understand him and his personality.
Měl rád burčák, strašně rád bych se s otcem opil, jako chlap s chlapem. I jako malý jsem s ním chodil na veřejnou plovárnu. Ani jeden z nás neuměl plavat, ale to vůbec nevadilo. Těšil jsem se, až se posadíme u bufetu a dáme si vuřt a napůl sklenici piva. Otec nosil vuřty sebou, protože na plovárně byly drahé.
Kafka himself went to the Kinski Palais because there was one of the 5 German secondary schools in Prague.
Franz Kafka, once he was coming at school, so he didn't trust himself so much. He said, well, I did the first class, but maybe I will not be able to do another one. And he did it. So he said, well, I did first and second class, but maybe I'm not able to do the third one. So with that feeling, he was coming at school every day, 8 years. Later, he wanted to study literature, but the father decided that the advocacy would be fine. In effect, he didn't press him to overtake his business. So he wanted that he would be maybe something better or something else, someone who is maybe more educated. So Franz Kafka, he went to school, to Charles University, the Faculty of Law, and he was studying there.
That building used to be the Academy of Commerce, and Kafka frequented there some courses when he wanted to change his companies. After his studies of law, he began to work in Assicurazioni Generali, but that was a private company, and he had to work there from the early morning to the late evening.
He was the one who was coming to the fabrics, and he was observing how the people are working. If there is some maybe change or how they can work better, then they are not losing or missing their fingers, or how they can stay healthy. Even though he was very successful in his job, he didn't like it so much. He didn't like bureaucracy, he didn't like the noise, he didn't like all the system. At the beginning, Franz Kafka was thinking about to be a person who was do the painting, or he's going to be a painter. But he had very bad teachers, so he said that she destroyed his talent and he's not able to do it anymore, so he stopped. It was a very short period, therefore we have just a couple of the paintings here, of drawings.
Franz Kafka was a writer, and he was a writer who wrote with the help of pictures. When we see his pictures, so it is the continuation of his writing. When he was writing with all his body. 2 years before he died, he wrote a letter to his friend Max Brod about what it is for him to be a writer. He writes there that his life was more happy than life of others. Because he felt himself in literature to live in literature and through literature with his body. Franz Kafka had friends, and these were close friends. And they met quite often, every fortnight, to read to each other what they wrote, what they had been writing or what they had written during the last fortnight. In this house where Oskar Baum lived, they were 4. Oskar Baum, Max Brod, Felix Welch, and Franz Kafka. This was probably something which led Max Brod later to call them the Circle of Prague. course, there were other circles which they visited too, in the Café Louvre, for example. But that was more philosophical, not only literature. And they went to cafes, but Kafka wasn't a great cafe goer. He didn't drink coffee or wine.
Určitě to byl Max Brod. Existuje nějaký dopis, kde si domlouvají, že se sejdou o půlnoci v kavárně Louvre. A jak říkám, byl členem některých kroužků. Jeden z nich byl dokonce Kafka Circle, jako Kafkův kroužek. Zdá se, že tady jistý duch, nechci říct France Kafky zůstal, ale ten jistý duch, ten genius loci tady přetrvává. To znamená, když tady člověk je a nespěchá, tak si myslím, že může velmi dobře cítit to, co tady cítil Kafka a co tady v těch prostorech, v těch zdech opravdu zůstalo. Kavárna Louvre plnila tuto svoji úlohu, kde se protínaly všechny možné i umělecké vlivy. To znamená, to, co se ve společnosti odehrávalo, nebyla otázka pouze literatury. Byli tady samozřejmě další umělci, přirozeně nejbližší novináři, dále malíři, sochaři. Vzniklo tady spousta uměleckých hnutí, kroužků, Sursum například, český pen klub tady měl zakládající schůzy, takže je to umělecko-politické kvas tady prostě byl a je jasné, že kavárny žily díky umělcům tak, jak žili a prosperovali.
Well, this is something interesting, quite special. That used to be a tavern, just a pub, a specialty for Kafka. It became when he first noticed that there are some program leaflets of a Galician theater group. He was enthusiastic about the possibility to see and listen to a Jewish jargon theater.
Franz Kafka, he was really impressed by that, and he spent too much time with it, or too much for his father. But his father, he was not very happy about it because he didn't know exactly who were these people, what they were doing, and he was thinking that maybe his son should do something more intelligent.
In the trial, there is a couple of policemen or something like that. In the castle, there is a couple of two watchmen or helpers, they call themselves. Maybe he was inspired by those works. He liked to be in love. But he was already engaged to literature.
So first of them was Felis Bauer. It was mostly the relationship which was platonic. Felis, she was living in Berlin. Franz Kafka, he was living here in Prague, even though he didn't like it. They didn't have so much contact as usually two people have. Felis was quite patient, but there was also trouble with her sister because he had some small relationship with her sister as well. So it was difficult. Twice he asked her, Felis, do you want to get married with me? And twice he said no. So it was twice him who cancelled that. Otherwise, he wrote her around 600 letters with around 1,000 pages. So it was quite good reading. Another girlfriend was Julia. She was younger, but the trouble was that the father didn't like her. She was not coming from the same social level, therefore the wedding was something what was not possible to do. But we have here another girlfriend, Milena Jesenska. She was one who was maybe one of the most important person because she was the one who translated Kafka. She knew German language and Franz Kafka, he wrote majority in German language. So they had very good relationship. One of the interesting thing is that she was married. She had a husband, it was Polak, and Polak was a friend of Franz Kafka. And the last girl is Dora Diamant. She was very young, so once she was with Franz Kafka, so she had around 19 years. So once Franz Kafka was older and older, his girlfriends were usually younger and younger.
The Kafka family lived in this house also for a certain time. There is a picture, a photograph of Franz Kafka leaning here at the column. You must imagine him, very slim. And his sister Otla leaning here. When Kafka lived here, he was already sick. He began in the same time to learn Hebrew. He had it difficult with his identity because he was a Jew, but one whose family wanted to be assimilated, a Western assimilated Jew, and his father wouldn't give him a firm belief. He, let us say, admirer of those who had some belief. I don't think he had it. But he wanted to learn Hebrew because he wanted to leave for Palestine.
Já jsem totiž taky kdysi dávno chtěla být herečkou, víš, ale ne jako Emma. Hrála bych jenom v židovském divadle, hebrejském.
To se ti splní, uvidíš. Já se uzdravím a ty se staneš slavnou herečkou. A potom se přestěhujeme do Palestíny.
Otevřeme si tam restauraci, protože divadlo by nás neuživilo. A já budu přes den v kuchyni a večer v divadle.
The Jewishness of Kafka is again a very difficult and complex question. He actually made fun of all the rituals that a Jew has to undergo, but later in life, in his 30s, he became interested in religion, in mysticism, in Kabbalah. He visited couple of rabbis that were connected to Zionism and to various religious movements. So he definitely evolved with age.
Přesně mezi nohama k sochy prochází hranice mezi židovským a křesťanským čtvrtí vlastně. A navíc socha stojí mezi španělskou židovskou synagogou a mezi kostelem svatého Ducha, který je katolický. Jo. Takže vlastně ta socha je takovým zvláštním mezníkem toho duchovního i prostorového křesťanského a židovského světa. Když jsem hledal základní proporce, tak jsem musel zjistit, jak on byl vysoký. A našel jsem záznamy policie, které byly v jedné knize, kdy ho zatkli mezi socialistama na setkání socialistů a došlo tam během zatýkání prostě bitce a Franz Kafka podle pamětníků stál uprostřed toho srocení. A pobaveně se usmíval, rozhlížel se kolem sebe a byl o půl hlavy vyšší než většina těch dělníků, co tam byla. Tudíž jsem vyvodil, že pokud ty dělníci měli průměrně kolem 170 až 175 cm v té době, tak Franz Kafka musel mít kolem 180 cm.
Downtown was too noisy for him. So he looked for other possibilities near the river, and even a little farther he found a possibility to live in a silent place, and it was the Golden Lane. It didn't belong to him. It was sublet by his sister Otla. But Otla offered the little house to him for the afternoons and the evenings and even nights, and he wrote in the Golden Lane his best stories, which are gathered in the volume Country Doctor. In the castle, we know the end, even if there isn't one written. He told the end to his friend Max Brod. Kay would lie on his deathbed, and in the moment of his death, the messenger from the castle would come and tell him, "Now you are accepted, you can stay." You know, there is a very interesting aphorism by Kafka that may be because our life task fulfills the whole life we have. That's why it seems eternal. Yeah? And the castle is something like that. You have at first to finish your life before it can be considered to be accomplished.
He didn't finish many of his writings, but in other respects he left some of his writings in several forms, that we basically have this almost the same text, but not quite. So maybe he was a perfectionist by nature. Maybe we can find such traces in his last will as well, because he wanted to preserve only what was published during his lifetime, what was deemed of sufficient quality for publication, and not the rest.
But it wasn't an official will. He wrote that what was already published Okay, there he cannot do anything against it, but other things, letters, diaries, other stories, the trial, the castle, should be burned. Kafka even burned many things himself, but probably couldn't do all because his life was in it. People think it wasn't right of Max Brod to publish something which his friend didn't want to.
We actually don't know if Kafka really meant what he said to Max Brod, to destroy all of his other writings. It could be Poe's as well, that he knew in advance that Max Brod wouldn't do such a thing.
Wouldn't it be a greater crime to burn a living man, a human being, which Kafka in the literature, in his work, was, because he said, I am nothing but literature.
Ty jsi můj jediný přítel. Já to spálím. Slibuji. Děkuji. Až se to přiblíží, budou mi dávat morfium na utišení bolesti.
They were so close friends, Franz Kafka and Max Brod, that in a cemetery they are parted. Max Brod is buried in Israel, that's true, and Kafka in Prague. But in the new Jewish cemetery, on the wall against the grave of Franz Kafka, there is also a plaque remembering Max Brod being his friend. Kafka wrote 35 letters to Dora Diamant, which unfortunately have been confiscated by the Gestapo in the 30s. But we know that the Gestapo didn't destroy these things taken from the Jews. So they probably are somewhere in archives.
Maybe we will find out more writings by Kafka that we just still don't know that exist.